Have you ever stepped into an elevator and found yourself somewhere that shouldn't even exist? That's exactly what happened to me, trapped between reality and nightmare, taken to a floor no one should ever see. The air was thick with fear, the silence unbearable, and every shadow seemed alive, waiting. What I discovered down there was more terrifying than anything I could have imagined. And it all started with a simple push of a button. What lurks behind that forbidden door will haunt you forever. If you love stories that send chills down your spine, don't forget to follow and support this channel. Hit subscribe and join us for more real-life horror that you won't find anywhere else. I work as an IT technician for a finance company in downtown Chicago. Not exactly the job of dreams, but it pays the rent. Most days, I'm gone before dark. But that night, something kept me longer. There'd been a system crash on the 23rd floor, where my desk is, and I was the only one still around to fix it. By the time I got the database stable again, the office was silent. No voices. No phones ringing. Just the low hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional creak of a settling building. When I looked at the time, it was already past midnight. I rubbed my eyes, saved the changes, packed up my things, and headed for the elevators. The hallway was deserted. All the office lights on that side were dimmed to energy-saving mode, and not a single person was around. Even the janitors were gone. I pressed the down button and waited, listening to the buzz of the vending machine behind me. When the elevator finally opened, it did so with an unnatural slowness, like the doors were reluctant to move. I stepped inside and pressed the button marked L for lobby. The panel flickered briefly, but then the motor kicked in with a dull groan. Except instead of going down, the elevator jerked and started going up. I frowned. Maybe the system was bugging out after the crash. I watched the floor numbers change on the display. 24. 25. 26. I hit the L button again. Nothing happened. I tried 22, 21, still nothing. The elevator kept climbing. 27. 28. 29. My stomach tightened. The building only has 38 floors. I'd been to the top once during a fire drill. It was just an executive suite and a few empty conference rooms. The hum of the elevator changed, growing deeper. There was a moment, just one, when I thought maybe this was some kind of internal elevator maintenance test. But I knew better. Then the panel glitched. The numbers stuttered like a scratched DVD. When it corrected itself, it jumped. 38. 39. And then 40. The elevator stopped. The light overhead flickered once, and the doors opened. I hesitated. Because the hallway in front of me didn't look like anything in this building. It was dim. The walls were the color of old hospital tiles, stained with time and water damage. A faint buzzing filled the air, like electricity was bleeding through the wires in the walls. I leaned forward just slightly, unsure if I was seeing it right. There, scratched into the wall just outside the elevator doors, was a number. Not printed. Not lit. Just carved into the surface with something sharp. 40. And beneath it, smeared like someone used their fingers, were the words, "You shouldn't be here." I stepped back into the elevator, reaching instinctively for the button panel. But all the lights were off. The buttons were dead. The screen was blank. Then the lights went out completely. And I realized something I should have known the moment those doors opened. This wasn't part of the building. This wasn't part of reality at all. The darkness inside the elevator was total. My heart thudded hard in my chest as I stood perfectly still, afraid that any sudden movement might trigger something I couldn't take back. I reached for my phone. The screen glowed weakly, but it had no signal. I turned on the flashlight and pointed it at the panel. All the buttons were still there, but none of them were lit. The emergency call button did nothing. I pressed it anyway. Over and over. Nothing. The elevator doors remained open, as if inviting me, no, daring me, to step out. I slowly turned the flashlight toward the hallway outside. It looked wrong. Not just old or dirty. The space itself felt stretched. The walls were too long. The corners seemed farther away than they should have been. Like the whole floor had been pulled into some kind of unnatural geometry. The air smelled like mildew and rusted metal. There were no windows, no ceiling lights, just dim wall sconces flickering every few feet, humming with that strange electrical buzz. The further the light traveled down the hall, the more distorted everything appeared. And then I heard it. A soft tapping. Somewhere far down the corridor. Rhythmic. Sharp. Tap. 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 I stood there frozen, one foot still in the elevator, gripping my phone like a lifeline. Then a second sound joined it. A dragging noise. Like something heavy was being pulled across the floor, slow and deliberate. I didn't want to see what it was. But the elevator wasn't responding. And I couldn't stand in the doorway forever. I stepped out. Instantly, the sound changed. The tapping stopped. The dragging paused. And then, silence. My footsteps echoed louder than they should have as I moved a few feet down the hallway, trying to keep my breathing steady. I turned around to check the elevator, just to make sure it hadn't disappeared behind me. It was still there. But the doors had closed. And when I rushed back and tried to press the button, the panel beside the door had no numbers. Just a scratched-out metal plate where buttons should have been. Then came a new sound. A soft voice. Distant. Female. She wasn't speaking words. Just humming. A slow, off-key lullaby echoing through the corridor like it had no source. I turned the flashlight down the hallway and finally saw something at the far end. A figure. She was standing perfectly still, backlit by a red emergency light flickering behind her. Barefoot. Wearing a tattered office blouse and a pencil skirt. Her head was tilted slightly, like she was listening. But she wasn't facing me. I held my breath. Then she moved. Just a step. One slow, deliberate movement forward. The hum stopped. And then she turned toward me. Her eyes were wide open, too wide. Her mouth hung slack, but her voice rang clearly inside my head like it was being broadcast through speakers hidden in the walls. "You're not supposed to be here." I ran. Back to the elevator. I pounded on the doors with my fists. No response. I screamed. My voice bounced uselessly down the corridor, swallowed by its impossible length. Behind me, the footsteps began again. Light. Bare. Getting closer. I kept smashing the metal with the side of my phone until the screen cracked. And then the elevator doors opened. No sound. No chime. Just a quiet glide. I lunged inside and hit every button I could. Still nothing. The woman stopped just outside the doors, her feet inches from crossing the threshold. She leaned forward slightly, peering into the elevator like she was studying a specimen in a glass box. Her lips never moved. But her voice echoed once more inside my head. "Go back before they notice you." Then the doors closed. And the elevator began to descend. The elevator hummed softly as it descended. The panel remained blank. No floor numbers, no lights, just the sensation of movement and the deep mechanical groan of unseen cables pulling me down. I stood perfectly still, the cracked screen of my phone still glowing faintly in my hand. My reflection in the elevator's mirrored wall stared back at me, pale and sweat-soaked. I watched it closely, part of me terrified it might move on its own. The descent seemed to go on for too long. Much longer than it should have. Then, without warning, the elevator jolted to a stop. The doors slid open with a dry hiss. And I was back. It looked exactly like the lobby. Bright fluorescent lights. The receptionist's desk. Security gates. Even the soft jazz they always played on the overhead speakers. But it was quiet. Too quiet. I stepped out slowly. Something felt off, even though everything appeared normal. I walked past the front desk. No one was there. Not even the night guard who always dozed off in the chair behind the monitors. I reached the glass doors at the front of the building. The city was still outside, cars, streetlights, the occasional bus rumbling past. But not a single person was moving. Everyone was frozen. A man mid-stride on the sidewalk. A woman reaching for her phone on a bench. A cyclist leaned slightly forward, suspended in motion like a pause video. My chest tightened. I turned back toward the elevator and froze. There was something on the floor. A footprint. Wet. Bare. Leading from the elevator doors across the smooth marble lobby. Another. Then another. They weren't mine. I followed them, slowly. The trail led past the front desk and toward the stairwell. Each print smeared slightly, as though whatever had left them had unsteady footing, or wasn't completely solid. The stairwell door was cracked open. I stared at it, listening. There was a soft breathing sound just beyond it. Shallow. Ragged. Like someone, or something, was waiting. I didn't want to look. But I couldn't turn away. I pushed the door open just enough to peer inside. No one was there. Just the empty stairwell stretching up and down, bathed in pale yellow emergency light. But the footprints continued upward. I didn't chase them. I didn't even move. I backed away and turned toward the building exit. My only thought now was to leave. To get outside. Away from that floor. Away from whatever had come down with me. I reached the glass doors again and pushed. They didn't move. Locked. I pulled harder. Nothing. Behind me, I heard a click. The sound of the stairwell door closing slowly on its own. And then, another sound. A whisper. Not from a voice, but from somewhere deeper. Beneath the building. Beneath the walls. Like the structure itself was breathing. I turned toward the security desk, hoping to find a phone, or at least someone, anyone. But as I approached, the monitors on the desk blinked to life all at once. Every screen showed the same thing. Me. Standing in the lobby. From multiple angles. Frozen. And in every frame, just behind me, barely visible in the reflection of the marble floor, was a second figure. Thin. Pale. Watching. But when I turned around, there was nothing there. I stood completely still, my back to the elevator, facing the wall of glowing security monitors. My reflection stared back at me from the glossy marble floor, alone, except in the screens I wasn't. There, just behind me, in every angle of footage, was the same shape. A silhouette. Vague. Thin. Barely distinct. It didn't move. It didn't sway. It just stood there, inches from my back, unmoving. I spun around again. The lobby was empty. But when I turned back, the monitors had changed. One by one, each feed began to flicker, glitching, stuttering, as if something was interfering with the signal. Then they went black, all except one. It was still showing me. But now, I was no longer alone in the frame. That figure, the one behind me, was closer. Much closer. Its head was level with mine, face blurred like static. No eyes. No mouth. Just a smear of human shape, as if reality itself couldn't fully render it. I backed away from the desk slowly, trying not to breathe too loudly. The overhead lights began to hum, just slightly louder than before. The kind of pitch that gets under your skin. That's when the elevator dinged. I snapped toward it. The doors had opened again, and the interior was pitch black. I didn't move. I couldn't. Because inside the elevator, just barely visible, something shifted. It was the woman. The one from floor 40. Her bare feet stepped forward, touching the marble lobby floor again. Her eyes were hollow. Her face wrong. Like it had been stretched in all the wrong places, as though someone had tried to reassemble her from memory. She walked out slowly, head tilted, and began to hum. That same lullaby. Soft. Broken. She didn't look at me. Just walked past, disappearing behind a support column across the room. I waited. Counted the seconds. Listened. Nothing. I took a step toward the exit again, heart racing, thinking I could maybe smash through the glass if I had to. Then all the lights went out at once. The lobby plunged into darkness. The hum stopped. For a moment, I was suspended in silence, swallowed by the pitch black. Then the emergency lights kicked in, red dim, pulsing. And in the flickering red glow, I saw it. A handprint. Pressed against the glass from the inside. The shape was smeared and elongated. Not like a normal hand. Too many joints. Fingers too thin. Almost like. I turned and bolted. Not toward the exit. Toward the service hallway behind the front desk. There was a stair access door at the end of it. Manual lock. No security system. I slammed my shoulder into it, and it gave way with a metallic pop. Inside, concrete walls and echoing steps. I ran downward, hoping it would take me to the underground parking deck. Behind me, echoing softly through the stairwell, I heard it again. The humming. Getting closer. I ran faster than I ever had in my life, the stairwell echoing with the pounding of my own footsteps and that distant, eerie hum growing louder with each floor I descended. Down past the first basement level. Then the second. And then, something strange happened. There was no label on the next landing. Just a door with peeling gray paint and a rusted metal plate where a floor number should have been. But the humming had stopped. I pressed my ear to the cold metal door. Nothing. I waited, trying to catch my breath, then pushed it open slowly. A rush of damp air hit me, heavy with mold and dust. The lights inside flickered dimly. Some were cracked, others dead. Pipes ran along the ceiling like roots, dripping condensation. The hallway beyond was narrower than the ones above, lined with old utility cabinets and warning signs that had long since faded. I took a careful step inside. The door closed behind me with a soft latch. I didn't look back. This place wasn't on the building's floor plan. I knew that. I'd worked here for 4 years. Whatever this was, it wasn't supposed to exist. I kept moving forward, my steps slow and deliberate. The floor was wet, but not from water. The moisture was thick, oily, and left my shoes sticking slightly with every movement. And then I heard a sound I didn't expect. A voice. Real. Weak. Human. Hello? Is someone there? I froze. It came from behind one of the cabinets. I hesitated, then edged closer. There, hunched in the corner between the wall and an old breaker box, was a man. His suit was torn, shirt stained with grime. His eyes were bloodshot, skin pale like he hadn't seen sunlight in days. He looked at me like he'd just seen a ghost. You're real? I nodded slowly. Who are you? He struggled to his feet, leaning against the wall for support. Mark Holloway. I work upstairs. Legal team. He blinked rapidly, as if trying to convince himself I wasn't a hallucination. I took the elevator last week. It stopped and brought me here. My stomach dropped. How long have you been down here? He looked around, trembling. No clocks. No phones. No way out. The stairwell won't go up. I tried. And the elevator, it only opens when it wants to. Sometimes it brings more people. Sometimes. His voice trailed off. What? He looked me dead in the eyes. Sometimes it doesn't bring people. It brings them. The humming started again. Not from behind us, but ahead. Further down the hallway. His eyes widened in panic. It's hurt us. I grabbed his arm and pulled. Come on. We ran down the hallway, past broken lockers, old tools, forgotten equipment. Then we saw it, a heavy metal door with a keypad. It looked newer than everything else around it. Clean. Maintained. Mark reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn keycard. I found this on someone. Someone who didn't make it. He swiped it. The red light turned green. The door clicked. We stumbled inside and slammed it shut. Total silence. The room was pitch black. Until a single strip light flickered on above us, revealing walls covered in elevator schematics, security footage, and photos. Photos of people. Dozens of them. Pinned to corkboards. Some were marked with dates. Others were crossed out in red ink. And there, on the far side of the wall, was a photo of me. Freshly printed. Unmarked. The moment my eyes locked onto that photo, my own face staring back at me from the far wall, freshly printed, still curling at the corners, I felt something shift inside me. Like the building had closed around us. Mark stared at it too, his mouth slightly open, then scanned the wall in a panic. There were others. Photos of men and women, young and old. Some looked terrified. Some were mid-scream. Some were barely recognizable. All pinned methodically, neatly. A few had been slashed through with red marker in thick, violent strokes. What is this place? I whispered. Mark shook his head. I don't know. But someone's been keeping track. Watching. Choosing. We moved through the room slowly. The light flickered above us, buzzing like it was on the edge of dying. There were papers scattered on metal desks, folders with floor schematics, ones that included floors that didn't exist. There was one labeled simply, "Before access restricted." I opened it. Inside were grainy black and white photographs of the same woman I had seen on floor 40. Long dark hair. Distorted features. In each image, her position shifted. One frame she stood in a hallway. The next, she was closer. In another, she was crouching just outside an elevator shaft. There was no camera that could have taken that final shot. It was too close. Too centered. Almost like she wanted to be seen. I flipped to the last page. It was a single line, typed in all lowercase. Do not engage. Do not follow. Do not speak. I looked over at Mark. He was at the corner of the room, inspecting a metal locker. It's locked, he muttered, tugging at the handle. But I think there's something inside. Before I could stop him, he yanked it hard. The latch broke with a metallic pop. The locker swung open. Inside was a monitor, small, old, the kind used in freight control rooms. It flickered to life without anyone touching it. A grainy camera feed came into focus. A hallway. Same as the one outside this room. But this feed was live. We saw ourselves. In real time. Me, standing behind him. Then, the camera shook slightly, just a static twitch. And now, there was a third figure in the frame. Standing behind us. Motionless. Tall. Thin. Skin pale and waxy like melting plastic. No face. Just a flat surface, like skin had grown over what should have been features. We spun around. Nothing. The hallway behind the security room was empty. We turned back to the screen. The third figure was closer. Its head was now tilted at a crooked angle, like its neck had given up supporting it. The screen began to glitch, pixelating, and then it went black. Mark stepped away, shaking. It's not just a woman. There's more. God, there's more. I walked toward the room's exit door. I needed to get out. To find stairs. A phone. Something real. The handle wouldn't turn. It was locked. From the outside. We were trapped. And from somewhere just beyond the walls of that room, the humming began again. This time, it wasn't distant. It was right outside the door. The humming wasn't soft anymore. It was deliberate. Louder. As if whoever, or whatever, was out there wanted us to know it was getting closer. I pressed my ear to the cold metal. Something scraped against the other side. Fingernails maybe. Or claws. A slow, steady drag from top to bottom. The sound was too long for a human hand. Too deliberate. Mark backed away, panicking. We're not getting out through there. The lights inside the room dimmed again, flickering like the building was breathing. That same low-frequency hum from earlier began to rise, vibrating through the floor and up into my chest. And then, silence. Not the quiet kind. The dead kind. Like sound itself had been swallowed. We both stood still. Even our own breaths felt muffled. Then the door clicked. Once. Just a simple, clean mechanical sound. Mark and I locked eyes. I reached for the handle. Turned it slowly. It opened. And revealed nothing. The hallway was empty. No sign of movement. No footprints in the thick dust. No sound. Except the humming had moved. It was now coming from the end of the hallway. Down past where the stairwell had been. I stepped into the hall cautiously, eyes sweeping the shadows. Mark hesitated but followed. We need to go up, he whispered. Now. We moved fast, ducking under dangling pipes and stepping over fallen tiles. When we reached the stairwell again, I tried the door. It wasn't locked. I pulled it open and looked up the dark, narrow shaft. And saw it. Just barely. A shape leaning over the railing several floors above, watching. No eyes. No face. Just presence. Then it moved. Downward. Fast. I grabbed Mark and yanked him into the stairwell. We turned and started climbing, taking the steps two at a time. We passed the unmarked floor. Then B2. Then, the stairs stopped. Completely. The space above had been walled off. Bricks. Fresh cement. As if someone had sealed off the way out recently. Mark slammed his fists against the bricks, cursing. They built over it. They don't want anyone coming back up. A deep groan echoed through the stairwell. Not structural. Alive. We turned and looked below. The humming started again. But it wasn't coming from the bottom of the stairs. It was coming from behind the brick wall above us. I stepped back, breathing hard. And then, a crack formed in the bricks. Small. Hairline. But it moved as we watched. Spreading. like something was pushing from the other side. Mark shouted, "Go! Go down! Now!" We ran. Back through B2. Back past the hallway with the security room. We didn't look to see if the figure was following. We didn't need to. We could feel it. The humming grew louder. So loud it became a vibration in our bones. And then, we saw the elevator again. Doors wide open. Lit. Waiting. I hesitated. Mark didn't. He jumped inside and slammed the close button. "Come on," he shouted. I dove in just as the doors slid shut. Silence. The buttons flickered. Every floor lit up one by one. But the elevator wasn't moving. Instead, the panel reset itself. New numbers appeared. Levels I had never seen before. L1, L2, L3. And the elevator began to descend. The elevator dropped with a weightless pull, deeper than any floor should have gone. The hum of the descent wasn't mechanical, it was organic. Wet. Almost like breathing through a throat too tight. Mark clung to the handrail, his knuckles white. I stared at the panel as the numbers ticked down. L3. L4. L5. There was no end. I had no idea how far below ground we were. This wasn't architecture. It was something else. Then, without warning, the elevator stopped. No jolt. Just silence. The panel flickered, then blinked off completely. The lights dimmed. And the doors slid open. A hallway lay ahead, but this one wasn't made of concrete or drywall. The walls were black, glossy, and curved slightly inward, almost like a tunnel. The floor was slick, damp, and warm beneath our feet. There were no lights. But we could see. Faint blue pulses throbbed inside the walls like veins. The glow was rhythmic, alive. A slow, steady heartbeat. I stepped out. Mark hesitated. "Where the hell are we?" I couldn't answer. Because whatever this place was, it wasn't part of any building. The air was thick. Not just humid, but heavy, like it was pressing down on us. And somewhere deep in the silence, we could hear breathing. Not ours. Slow. Raspy. Coming from inside the walls. We moved forward carefully, following the pulse of the glowing veins. The hallway twisted unnaturally, like it had grown instead of been built. At one point I swear the walls moved, just a slow twitch, as if reacting to our presence. Then we reached a door. Or something like a door. It was round. Seamless. But as we approached, it peeled open without a sound, unfolding inward like a flower blooming in reverse. Inside was a chamber. Massive. Organic. And at its center, something hanging from the ceiling. A figure. Thin. Wrapped in cables. It looked almost human, but stretched wrong. Its mouth was wide open, but unmoving. Its eyes, if you could call them that, were just glossy black slits. And then the humming returned. Not from behind us. From it. The sound didn't come through the air, it came through us. Vibrating in our bones. In our teeth. Deep in our chests. Mark dropped to his knees, covering his ears. Screaming without making a sound. I tried to step back, but I couldn't move. My legs were locked in place. Then the figure's head tilted downward. Toward me. Not just looking. Focusing. And from the ceiling around it, dozens of cables slithered down. Some were tipped with needles. Others with jagged, rusted clamps. They didn't fall. They reached. Toward us. One wrapped around Mark's ankle and dragged him forward. He screamed and tried to fight, but the cable moved fast, inhumanly fast, yanking him into the center of the chamber toward the hanging figure. I rushed forward to grab him, but another cable whipped toward me. It missed by inches. I grabbed a loose piece of metal from the ground and swung it, slicing through one of the smaller lines. It shrieked. The cable shrieked, like it had been alive. I didn't wait. I grabbed Mark's arm and pulled as hard as I could. The cable around his leg snapped free, but not before leaving a deep, bloody gash. We stumbled back toward the door, still open. The chamber began to tremble. The hanging figure twitched for the first time. And then, it screamed. A sound like static and glass breaking inside our heads. We ran. Didn't look back. Didn't breathe. The tunnel twisted violently now, as if rejecting us. The walls rippled and shifted, trying to trap us. But somehow, we made it back to the elevator. I slammed the close button. The doors shut. And the car rocketed upward. No floor numbers. No stops. Just up. The elevator stopped just as violently as it had risen. With a metallic shudder, the doors opened, and we were back. The lobby. Same polished floor. Same front desk. Same dull elevator chime. Except it was empty. No receptionist. No security guard. No visitors. Just sunlight filtering in through the massive glass windows. Mark and I stepped out like we were walking into a dream. My ears rang. My legs barely held me. I checked my phone, 4:42 a.m. We'd been gone for less than an hour. We stumbled outside. The city was waking up. Delivery trucks rumbled down the street. Early joggers passed by, oblivious. It was like none of it had happened. Mark clutched his leg, the makeshift bandage already soaked in red. He muttered under his breath, over and over. We weren't supposed to see it. We weren't supposed to see it. I flagged down a cab and shoved him in. I told the driver the nearest hospital, and then stood there, staring back at the building. It loomed just as it always had. Perfectly normal. Perfectly empty. I went home. Didn't sleep. Didn't speak. When the sun was high, I grabbed my laptop and began digging. Floor plans? Contractor records? Anything. And that's when things got weirder. Official records showed the building only had 38 floors. No mention of 39. Number 40. No basement levels. I found old blueprints from the original construction. Same thing. I checked satellite schematics. The elevator's shaft didn't even extend into the ground. Just a standard foundation. I reached out to the building management. They responded, polite but firm. There is no level 40. Our elevators do not travel below ground. Please refrain from circulating misinformation. I sent them the photo of the security room. No reply. The email bounced 2 hours later. Address no longer existed. I called Mark. No answer. I waited a day. Then I went to his apartment. The door was open. Inside was chaos. Drawers pulled out. Papers everywhere. Walls covered in writing. But no Mark. Just one note, taped to the wall by a knife, written in red ink. It followed me home. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound felt like it meant something. The radiator groaned once, and I jumped. Then the next morning, when I stepped into the elevator in my own building, there it was. Beneath the normal buttons. A new one. Faint. Not glowing. But etched there all the same. L1. My hand trembled as I reached for it. But I didn't press it. Not yet. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. The elevator button labeled L1 haunted my thoughts. I knew if I pressed it, I would go back to that nightmare below the building, the place that shouldn't exist. But curiosity gnawed at me. I stepped into the elevator, fingers trembling as I hovered over the button. A sudden chill ran down my spine. Then I pressed it. The elevator lurched. Darkness swallowed me again. No hum. No music. Just cold silence. When the doors opened, I was somewhere different. A long corridor stretched before me, lined with flickering lights. And at the end, a shadow waited. It wasn't human. It was waiting for me. The shadow didn't move, but I could feel its presence pressing down on me like a physical weight. My heart thundered in my chest as I took a hesitant step forward. The corridor seemed endless, stretching farther than any normal building could contain. With every step, the flickering lights dimmed, casting longer, darker shadows that seemed to reach for me. The air grew colder, heavier, filled with a metallic scent that made my stomach churn. Suddenly, the figure moved, slowly turning its head, revealing a face twisted beyond recognition, blank eyes staring through me like I was already gone. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. The elevator doors behind me slammed shut. There was no turning back now. Panic surged through me like electricity. I spun around, pounding the closed elevator doors, screaming for help that wouldn't come. The corridor began to warp, walls bending and twisting, closing in. From the shadows, whispers crawled up my spine, hissing voices promising release if I surrendered, but a fate worse than death if I stayed. Suddenly, the floor beneath me shuddered. The walls pulsed with that same sickly blue glow, and tendrils of darkness stretched out, reaching for my ankles. With every ounce of strength, I lunged forward, breaking through the shadows and bursting back into the elevator. The doors slid shut just as the tendrils grazed my skin. The elevator jolted upward violently, racing back to the lobby. When the doors opened, the morning sun poured in, warm and blinding. The nightmare was over. Or so I thought. I stumbled out into the daylight, heart pounding and clothes soaked with sweat. But the world felt wrong, off. The bustling city around me moved like a shadow play, faces blurring and twisting like reflections in broken glass. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message. No sender. Just 2 words. It's here. A cold dread settled deep inside. The building still stood behind me, innocent and unchanged. But I knew the truth. Whatever I encountered in those hidden floors was not done with me. And now, it was coming. Days passed, but I couldn't escape the feeling of being watched. At home, at work, even in the streets, shadows seemed to twitch in my peripheral vision. I returned to the building, determined to prove it all was real. The lobby was bustling again, elevator buttons normal and familiar, no sign of the secret floor. Yet, when I pressed the button for my usual office floor, the elevator stopped. The doors opened to reveal a black, endless void. No light. No sound. Just darkness. Frozen, I heard a voice whisper from nowhere and everywhere. Welcome back. The elevator doors slammed shut. I was trapped. The elevator rattled as it descended into the void. My breath came in ragged gasps, heart pounding against my ribs like a desperate warning. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the elevator stopped. The doors slid open, again, to darkness. But this time, I stepped out. The air was cold, metallic, and thick with an unshakable dread. All around me, whispered voices echoed, snatches of memories, fears, regrets. I realized then that this place wasn't just a hidden floor. It was a prison for lost souls trapped between worlds. And now, I was one of them. The elevator doors behind me closed. Silence swallowed everything. I was gone.